going on. Elections are going to be very important for the first time in California for many, many years. And so it's important for us as Democratic women to bring those topics to you and then inform you and get to see some of the people that are behind them as volunteers for the candidates, what they have done, why they have decided to support a candidate. Democratic Women of the Desert is an organization that gives out scholarships to progressive students. We also help a lot of the people that are running for office. We are hoping that we can have more women run for office in this area. As Democratic women, we see that there's less of our progressive women running in the local elections, and we are going to be spending a lot of time making sure that we provide them with the money and the resources necessary so they can continue running for office. We need that locally. We thank you for participating with us. We will continue bringing speakers, and if you want to join us, and if you want to be get the information as to what we do every month, please give us your email. We can send you the information. But we need all of us to make sure that we do the best job possible, that we raise the money necessary to go into communities that need that representation. So I'm going to introduce you to Ellie Kay. And Ellie is in charge of programs. And she's going to conduct the part on the candidates. And I would like to thank you and welcome you to Democratic Women of the District. I will be back.
I would like to thank the Democratic Women of the Desert for putting this together. Sometimes I know it may seem difficult to put two sides together, but you know, just like in the debates, we could do this and we could just hear both sides out in a way where we both could diplomatically listen. But from my perspective, when Bernie Sanders, I first heard about him in 2012, and one of the things that he came up to say was that on the floor, on the Senate floor, he said that the people of the United States are in trouble right now, and they're angry, and you could say he's partially correct, because I come from the perspective of a school teacher, and I see a lot of things happening throughout the Coachella Valley, not just in the Coachella Valley, but across the United States, and I feel that should not be happening. There's a lot of inhumane things happening, and there's a lot of wealth inequality that is continuing to happen. And as a school teacher, it's really difficult to bring all these resources together for your students. And you ask yourselves, why do we have to bring so much or put our energy into bringing so many or so much needed resources? It's because we do not have not only the infrastructure, but the social programs in place to make sure that every person, every individual has the right to health care, has the right to make a living wage without living paycheck to paycheck, without tearing families, mothers, fathers, children apart because they are living in fear whether or not they can afford to live or afford to pay the rent or the electric bill. So I'm seeing these things happen, and I feel that when Bernie Sanders speaks about a living wage, universal health care, getting money out of politics, also decreasing the amount of people in prisons right now. As some of you guys know, there's a prison being built in Indio, $300 million. If you guys haven't seen that, please go over to Indio. It's going to be, it's one of the biggest buildings in Indio. So you think about these things, when Bernie Sanders says he will decrease the prison population, I think that is the direction that we should be moving towards as a country. I think that there's a school to prison pipeline that exists. And we have to stop it. I think it's time to stop it now, and I believe that this man, Bernie Sanders, is one of the best candidates out there to try to move this country forward. Like I'm saying, to make sure that every single human being has access to health care and is able to make ends meet, because I have to say that is not happening right now. I could talk on, but that's one of the many reasons why I support Bernie Sanders. Thanks so much.
We've got the wonderful Bobby Joe, so she's going to talk about. Hello, party people. Good morning, party people. Good afternoon.
Hey.
My name is Bobby Joe Chavarria. I originally, I used to have this quote. I first got involved with issues of political stuff because at one point I had 5 active duty relatives who were serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. Russell, Devin, Kenny, Francine, and Anthony. I have 2 cousins who were veterans of Desert Storm. Anthony, who had rejoined in the 2000s, and Sammy, as well as my friend Jim, who I went to high school with. So in 2001, after 9/11, I kind of felt like there should be some better answers. I didn't know what they were. And then in 2003, when we invaded Afghanistan, or Iraq, and all my cousins started joining up, I really did, again, feel we should have some better answers, but I didn't know what they were. So I went looking for some answers. And I was fortunate enough to find a couple of different pieces of legislation that were talking about, even before 9/11, talking about changing the focus of how we organize nationally and internationally when it comes to issues of war and violence. And it was a Department of Peace building that was proposed by Congressman Dennis Kucinich in Ohio. And so I got active with that campaign, and it is as a volunteer. And then I realized that it was just getting a little bit more and more desperate in terms of on the international scope as well as here locally. I learned that many of the issues that we talk about when we look at war have to deal with violence, and violence have to deal with economic opportunity, have to deal with whether people feel that they have a role in government and self-determination. And we also know that access to health care and medical care and resources, opportunity, that's what contributes to violence at a very local community level, and then can escalate back and forth between bigger tribal, or what we know in the United States as maybe gang violence, and then can escalate even further into, say, civil war, and then full out state-to-state war. So learning that then really brought home to focus what I was experiencing and what my community was experiencing. And I am, again, now cousin to 5 Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, and an aunt to 2 veterans as well, who have come back. And we asked them to do something for our country, and we asked them to give up maybe a little bit of their peace, and we don't necessarily know how to give it back to them. And I see that every time I see them at birthday parties, at weddings, at family events, where they were willing to give so much. And so I made the decision that if they were willing to give that much, then surely I could do the same. And I changed my life. In 2006, I gave up my sales directorship. I was in sales, gave that up, and have entered the realm of 4, but also entered the realm of really fighting for my community as best as I can. So since then, I have established the Inland Empire Do Peace and Nonviolence Alliance. I worked with Amnesty International, worked with the Justice for Immigrants Coalition here in the Inland Empire. I was an organizer for Acorn during the subprime mortgage crisis, and I was sad when that organization was decimated because just 6 months later, 7 homes on my block, my neighbors, were foreclosed upon and were empty on my block. And that happened across the Inland Valley, right? 3 out of 5 homes that were being written were in subprime loans. So I participated in that. And then I started focusing on my local stuff. And here's the deal. I got to meet Hector Sigala, who was an organizer with Amnesty International, and he and I have stayed in contact for the last 10 years. He has been a staffer in Senator Sanders' office for the last 6 years. And so I have got to know that on all of those issues, Senator Sanders was in the right spot and has been fighting for that. And so it's just what he has dedicated his whole life, what I've barely touched on in this last decade. We've got to have people like that, and there are people like that. And in terms of whether or not, as a party people, where he stands, I've stayed with the Democratic Party because we have the Progressive Caucus, we have the most progressive platform across the country, and Senator Sanders helped establish the Progressive Caucus in Congress, which was is the largest Democratic caucus in Congress, and he helped establish that. So we're in the right spot, he's in the right spot, and he's been right on all the issues. Thank you.